Chosen one, that nagging feeling in your gut has been trying to tell you something crucial. Someone in your inner circle has been running the most sophisticated identity theft operation you've ever encountered, and they just discovered that trying to mirror you isn't as easy as someone thought. The game they thought they were winning just backfired spectacularly, and what you're about to uncover will blow your mind about how deep this deception goes and why your authentic power can never truly be replicated. This individual represents something you're going to encounter multiple times throughout your journey as a chosen one, the person who wants to be the smartest person in every room they enter. They've built their entire identity around being the authority, the expert, the one everyone turns to for answers. The problem is, your natural wisdom and authentic presence threatens that carefully constructed image, and they've decided that instead of growing alongside you, they'd rather tear you down to maintain their position. And there's something else happening simultaneously that you haven't fully grasped yet, something about the timing of when they disappear from people's lives and when they reappear in new social circles. Something about how your knowledge transforms into their wisdom when shared with others who've never met you. The moment you start seeing this dynamic clearly, everything begins to make sense. Those times when you felt drained after spending time with this person, those conversations where you shared your insights only to hear them repeated by someone else later. Those situations where your ideas were dismissed when you presented them but celebrated when they came from another source. It was all part of a larger pattern you're finally ready to acknowledge. Your greatest strength as a chosen one has always been your ability to see potential in others and to help them grow into their best selves. You naturally create space for others to shine because you understand that there's enough light for everyone. This generous spirit has been both a blessing and a target, because not everyone operates from the same abundance mindset that comes so naturally to you. As this realization settles in, you might feel a mix of validation and sadness. Validation because your instincts were correct all along, and sadness because someone you possibly cared about has been viewing your relationship as a competitive sport rather than a genuine connection. The depth of their deception is about to become even clearer as you recognize the sophisticated nature of their copying mechanism. The most shocking revelation in this entire situation is discovering just how methodically this person has been studying and copying your essence. They've been like an understudy watching the lead actor, memorizing every gesture, every line, every emotional beat, planning to take over the role when the opportunity presented itself. The difference is that in theater, this is an honorable profession. In real life, it's identity theft of the most personal kind. You'll start noticing how they've adopted your phrases, your perspectives, and even your spiritual beliefs. If you're someone who talks about being an empath, suddenly they're an empath too. If you have a particular way of handling conflict, they start using your exact approach. If you have certain values or principles that define who you are, they begin expressing those same values as if they developed them independently. The most disturbing pattern emerges when you realize that they've been collecting your wisdom during intimate conversations, then disappearing from your life only to show up in other people's stories as this incredibly insightful, spiritually aware person. They take the knowledge you shared with them in moments of vulnerability and present it to others as their own hard-earned wisdom. The sophistication of their operation becomes clear when you start connecting the dots between your conversations and their social media posts. That profound insight you shared during a vulnerable moment becomes their inspirational quote weeks later. The book you recommended to them suddenly appears in their story as a life-changing discovery they made independently. The coping strategy you taught them for dealing with difficult emotions becomes their signature advice for helping others. What particularly disturbing is how they've been beta testing different aspects of your personality with different audiences. With one group of friends, they might showcase your humor and wit. With another circle, they emphasize your compassion and wisdom. With romantic interests, they deploy your charm and emotional intelligence. They've been splitting your complete personality into component parts and using them strategically depending on what each situation demands. And the timing of their disappearances from your life isn't random. It coincides perfectly with their need to avoid being exposed. They vanish just before their new connections might meet you and recognize their borrowed personality traits. The most revealing aspect of this entire situation is how differently you and this person approach influence and leadership. Your power comes from authenticity. People are drawn to you because you're genuinely yourself. You admit your mistakes, you grow from your challenges, and you create space for others to be authentic too. You operate from the understanding that everyone can shine, everyone has something valuable to contribute, and true leadership means helping others discover their own strength. The irony becomes clear when you realize they've been accusing you of the exact behaviors they exhibit themselves. They call you controlling while trying to dictate how you should live your life. They label you as manipulative while running elaborate schemes to damage your reputation. They claim you're closed-minded while refusing to consider any perspective that challenges their authority. The power struggle intensifies when they realize you won't submit to their authority. Your natural confidence and self-assuredness threatens their need to be the dominant personality in every relationship. They've built their sense of self around being superior to others, and your refusal to play the role of the inferior party destabilizes their entire identity structure. What makes this dynamic particularly toxic is how they've been positioning your relationship to others. In their version of events, you're the demanding one who expects everyone to cater to your needs. You're the difficult person who can't accept feedback or criticism. You're the problematic individual who creates drama wherever you go. Meanwhile, they present themselves as the patient, understanding person who tried so hard to help you, but eventually had to protect themselves from your negative energy. The most insidious part of this power dynamic is how they've been training you to doubt your own perceptions and reactions. Every time you've felt uncomfortable with their behavior, they've provided an alternative explanation that makes you question your judgment. Every time you've tried to address a problem in your relationship, they've redirected the conversation to focus on your sensitivity or unrealistic expectations. The most heartbreaking realization in this journey is understanding that this person doesn't actually know who they are underneath all the masks they wear. While you've been doing the difficult work of authentic self-discovery, they've been perfecting the art of becoming whoever they think others want them to be. They change their personality, their opinions, and their values based on their audience, always performing rather than simply being. You'll notice they have different versions of themselves for different groups of people. With some friends, they're the spiritual guru dispensing wisdom about consciousness and enlightenment. With others, they're the successful entrepreneur sharing insights about business and wealth creation. With family, they might be the responsible caretaker who sacrifices their own needs for everyone else's well-being. With romantic partners, they become whatever they think that person desires most in a companion. The problem is that none of these versions are genuine. They're all carefully crafted performances designed to gain approval, admiration, or advantage. They've become so skilled at reading what others want to see that they've lost touch with who they actually are beneath all the performances. This is why they're so threatened by your authenticity. It reminds them of what they've sacrificed in their pursuit of external validation. The contrast becomes even more stark when you observe how they behave in group settings. They position themselves as the center of attention, steering conversations toward topics where they can showcase their borrowed wisdom or manufactured expertise. Meanwhile, you naturally facilitate conversations that allow everyone to contribute and shine, creating an environment where authentic connection can flourish. The depth of their identity confusion becomes apparent when you realize they've been collecting personality traits from multiple sources, not just you. They're like a psychological magpie, stealing shiny characteristics from everyone they encounter and attempting to integrate them into a cohesive persona. The result is a patchwork identity that lacks coherence and authenticity. What's particularly disturbing is how they've been using social media and other platforms to test different versions of themselves, measuring engagement and responses to determine which personality traits get the best reception. They've turned their identity into a marketing experiment, constantly optimizing their persona based on external feedback rather than internal truth. The saddest part of this dynamic is that somewhere underneath all the borrowed characteristics and performed personalities, there's probably a real person who has been abandoned and neglected for so long that they've forgotten they exist. Their authentic self has been buried under layers of strategic positioning and calculated presentations, leaving them feeling empty and disconnected, despite all their efforts to be admired and accepted. This emptiness is what drives their compulsive need to absorb your essence. They're not just copying your external characteristics, they're desperately trying to access the sense of wholeness and inner peace that comes from living authentically. They can mimic your words and actions, but they can't replicate the inner foundation that makes those expressions genuine. The physical and emotional symptoms you've been experiencing around this person weren't in your imagination, they were real responses to genuine energy drain. Every interaction with them left you feeling exhausted, confused, and somehow less than you were before the conversation began. You might have attributed this to your own sensitivity or emotional state, but the truth is far more deliberate and calculated than you realized. This person has been systematically siphoning your energy, your ideas, and your emotional resources while giving very little in return. They've mastered the art of making their problems your responsibility, their emotions your burden to manage, and their success dependent on your input and support. Meanwhile, when you needed support, understanding, or reciprocal energy, they were mysteriously unavailable or suddenly overwhelmed with their own crises. The most insidious part of this dynamic is how they've trained you to doubt your own perceptions. When you felt drained, they convinced you that you were being too sensitive. When you noticed the one-sided nature of your interactions, they redirected the conversation to their latest crisis or achievement. When you attempted to address concerns about your relationship, they made you feel like you were creating problems where none existed. Now that you can see the pattern clearly, you'll start noticing how dramatically different you feel when you're not in their presence. Your energy returns, your creativity flows more freely, your mood improves, and your natural optimism resurfaces. This contrast isn't coincidental. It's evidence of how much of yourself you were unconsciously giving away to maintain a relationship with someone who was actively working against your well-being. The energy vampirism operates on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, they're constantly seeking your attention, validation, and emotional support. They create crises that require your immediate response, share problems that demand your advice, and express vulnerabilities that trigger your natural impulse to help and comfort others. Beneath the surface, they're absorbing your emotional stability and using it to regulate their own chaotic internal state. Your calm presence soothes their anxiety, your confidence masks their insecurity, and your clarity helps them navigate situations they can't handle independently. They've essentially been using you as an external nervous system, relying on your emotional regulation to maintain their psychological equilibrium. On the deepest level, they're feeding off your life force itself. Your enthusiasm for life, your creative inspiration, your spiritual connection, your natural joy, all of these qualities have been slowly draining away as they absorb them to fuel their own empty existence. You've been unconsciously donating your vitality to someone who gives nothing back in return. While this person has been focused on copying your essence and competing for attention, you've been building something real and substantial in your life. Your finances have been improving steadily, your career or business has been growing, and you've been successfully managing all the various aspects of your life with increasing skill and confidence. This progress hasn't gone unnoticed, and it's becoming a major source of their resentment and desperation. The contrast between your ascending trajectory and their stagnant or declining situation is becoming impossible to ignore. While you've been investing in your growth, education, and future, they've been investing their energy in social manipulation and image management. While you've been building genuine relationships and authentic connections, they've been burning bridges and alienating people with their competitive and demanding behavior. This is why your independence threatens them so profoundly. Your success without their involvement proves that you never needed them the way they convinced you that you did. Your ability to thrive while they struggle contradicts their narrative that they were the valuable contributor in your relationship. Your growth, despite their attempts to hold you back, demonstrates that they were actually an obstacle rather than an asset in your journey. The financial disparity becomes particularly triggering for them because money represents freedom and options. Your improving financial situation means you have choices they don't have. You can afford to be selective about relationships because you're not dependent on others for your security or stability. You can pursue opportunities based on their alignment with your values rather than their immediate benefits. You can maintain your standards and boundaries because you have the resources to walk away from situations that don't serve you. Meanwhile, their financial instability makes them increasingly desperate for external support and validation. They need others to provide what they can't create for themselves: emotional stability, financial assistance, social connections, professional opportunities. This dependency makes them resentful of your independence and increasingly aggressive in their attempts to undermine your success. The strategies this person has been using against you follow a predictable pattern that becomes obvious once you know what to look for. They have a specific playbook for maintaining control and dominance in relationships, and understanding their tactics helps you protect yourself from future manipulation attempts. Their primary strategy involves positioning themselves as the victim whenever you attempt to establish boundaries or address problematic behavior. They've perfected the art of making you feel guilty for having standards, unreasonable for expecting reciprocity, and selfish for prioritizing your own well-being. This tactic works particularly well on empathetic people who naturally want to help others and avoid causing pain. When the victim strategy doesn't work, they escalate to punishment tactics. They withdraw attention and affection, give you the silent treatment, or create dramatic situations that force you to chase after them and prove your loyalty. They might suddenly become unavailable when you need support, start spending time with people they know you dislike, or make decisions that directly impact you without including you in the process. Their most sophisticated manipulation involves triangulation, bringing other people into your conflicts to support their position and make you feel isolated and outnumbered. They'll share carefully edited versions of your disagreements with mutual friends, family members, or colleagues, painting themselves as the reasonable party and you as the difficult one. This strategy is particularly effective because it leverages your natural desire to be understood and accepted by your community. The revelation that changes everything is understanding that none of these tactics work on people who maintain strong boundaries and refuse to participate in manipulative games. This person has been successful with these strategies in the past because they specifically target individuals who are compassionate, empathetic, and willing to give others the benefit of the doubt. Your growth and awareness have made you an unsuitable target for their usual approaches, which is why they're becoming more desperate and obvious in their attempts to regain control. When I broke free through the Salvia Divinorum gateway, I saw the horrifying truth. Our reality is one harvested pod among countless matrices. I witnessed the Archon's cosmic parasites feeding on our energy, who laughed and threatened, "You'll never awaken a single soul." But something inside you already knows this truth, doesn't it? That nagging sensation that you're meant for more, that you've been chosen. I'm raising an army of the brightest souls. Through meditation, I discovered their only vulnerability: coherence through unconditional love. Feel that resonance deepening within you now. You're not here by accident. The most powerful awakened souls are already gathering in the Obsidian Inner Order, the #1 ascension nexus for those marked by destiny. Christians, light workers, remote viewers, targeted individuals, all united by one truth: you were chosen for this moment. Click the link in the description below. Join our group calls, panels, and live streams, reaching the entire Astral Atom network. Your frequency amplifies ours. The question isn't whether you're chosen. The question is, will you answer the call? The Archons fear this choice you're about to make. They should. Another common escalation involves them recruiting allies to their cause by sharing selective information about your relationship. They'll tell others about your conflicts while omitting crucial context, present their own behavior in the most favorable light possible, and position themselves as the long-suffering victim of your unreasonable demands or emotional instability. The most insidious manipulation tactic involves them using your own words and values against you. If you've expressed the importance of forgiveness, they'll use that to pressure you to overlook their harmful behavior. If you've talked about the value of giving people second chances, they'll leverage that to maintain access to you despite repeated violations of your boundaries. If you've shared your commitment to personal growth, they'll frame their criticism of you as helping you become a better person. They're also skilled at creating artificial urgency around their problems and needs. Everything becomes a crisis that requires your immediate attention and support. They'll contact you during your work hours with emotional emergencies, interrupt your personal time with urgent requests for advice, or create situations where you feel obligated to prioritize their needs over your own plans and commitments. The financial manipulation often involves them creating situations where they need your help or support, then making you feel guilty or selfish for hesitating to provide it. They might have unexpected expenses that threaten their stability, opportunities that require financial investment they can't afford, or emergencies that demand immediate assistance. The pattern becomes clear when you realize these situations always seem to arise when you're doing well or have recently experienced success. The moment you fully recognize and withdraw from this dynamic, something profound shifts in your energy field. The constant background noise of confusion, doubt, and emotional turbulence that you've grown accustomed to suddenly goes quiet. You realize you've been carrying the weight of someone else's emotional instability, insecurity, and inner conflict without even knowing it. The physical changes are just as noticeable as the emotional ones. You sleep better because you're not processing someone else's chaos while you rest. You have more energy because you're not constantly managing someone else's emotions alongside your own. Your natural enthusiasm and optimism resurface because you're no longer walking on eggshells or anticipating the next conflict or crisis. Most importantly, you begin to remember who you were before this relationship began draining your resources and dimming your light. The aspects of your personality that made you confident, joyful, and naturally attractive to others start to emerge again. People in your life begin commenting on how much happier and more relaxed you seem, confirming that the changes you're experiencing are visible to others. The energetic shift extends beyond just feeling better. It actually changes your vibrational frequency in ways that attract different types of people and opportunities into your life. When you're no longer depleted and confused, you naturally become magnetic to individuals who operate from abundance, authenticity, and genuine good intentions. Your intuitive abilities strengthen dramatically once you're no longer doubting your perceptions or allowing someone else to gaslight you about your experiences. You start picking up on subtle cues and energy patterns that help you navigate relationships and situations with much greater wisdom and discernment. The creative blocks that you may have experienced during this relationship begin to dissolve as your mental and emotional energy is no longer being siphoned away. Projects that felt impossible to complete suddenly become manageable. Ideas that had been stuck begin flowing freely. The inspiration and motivation that are natural parts of your character return in full force. Your capacity for joy and spontaneity returns as well. Without the constant stress of managing someone else's emotional volatility, you rediscover your natural playfulness and enthusiasm for life. Simple pleasures become satisfying again. Social interactions feel lighter and more enjoyable. Your sense of humor and natural charisma re-emerge. With the energy vampire removed from your daily experience, you suddenly have space and resources to invest in relationships and opportunities that actually serve your growth and happiness. The time you were spending managing someone else's emotional crises can now be devoted to your own goals and dreams. The mental energy you were using to decode mixed messages and navigate manipulation can be redirected toward creative projects and meaningful connections. Your standards for relationships have been permanently elevated through this experience. You now understand the difference between someone who enhances your life and someone who depletes it. You can recognize the early warning signs of manipulative behavior and trust your instincts when something feels off about a person's intentions or character. The people who are entering your life now are operating from a completely different level of emotional maturity and authenticity. They communicate directly rather than through manipulation. They support your success rather than competing with it, and they add value to your life rather than creating constant drama and confusion. These new connections feel easy, natural, and mutually beneficial in ways that remind you what healthy relationships are supposed to feel like. Your romantic life, in particular, is about to transform dramatically. Without the energy drain and emotional confusion of the toxic relationship, you're becoming a magnet for people who appreciate and celebrate your authentic self. You're no longer settling for relationships that require you to diminish yourself to make someone else comfortable, and this shift in standards is attracting partners who actually deserve your energy and attention. The professional opportunities that begin appearing in your life reflect your elevated energy and clarified vision. Work that aligns with your values and utilizes your natural talents starts presenting itself. Collaborations with people who share your integrity and work ethic become available. Financial abundance flows more easily because you're no longer unconsciously sabotaging yourself or allowing others to drain your resources. Your living situation may even change as you realize that your environment should support your well-being rather than compromise it. Spaces that felt heavy or uncomfortable during the toxic relationship suddenly feel different, or you might find yourself drawn to new environments that better reflect your authentic preferences and energy. The social dynamics in your life shift as well. Friend groups that felt draining or superficial during the manipulation period either transform into more authentic connections or naturally fade away as you attract people who appreciate depth, honesty, and genuine mutual support. Your daily routines and self-care practices become more nourishing and effective because you're no longer using them to recover from constant emotional assault. Exercise feels energizing rather than necessary for stress management. Meditation brings peace rather than serving as an escape from chaos. Creative practices become sources of joy rather than outlets for processing trauma. The most valuable gift this difficult experience has given you is the ability to recognize these patterns immediately in future relationships. You can now spot the signs of someone who is more interested in what you can do for them than who you actually are. You can identify the subtle manipulation tactics that once confused and destabilized you. You can sense when someone is performing authenticity rather than embodying it. The confidence you've gained through successfully navigating and escaping this situation has transformed how you show up in the world. You're no longer seeking external validation or approval because you've learned to trust your own judgment and value your own opinions. You're not afraid of disappointing people who expect you to sacrifice your well-being for their comfort because you understand that healthy relationships don't require such sacrifices. You've developed what could be called manipulation immunity, an automatic defense system that recognizes and deflects attempts to control, guilt, or deceive you. This doesn't make you cynical or closed off, rather it makes you more discerning about who deserves access to your time, energy, and emotional investment. The ultimate victory in this situation isn't about getting revenge or proving that you were right about this person's character. It's about the complete transformation you've undergone through the process of recognizing, understanding, and liberating yourself from their influence. You've evolved into someone who can maintain their authentic power while protecting their energy from those who would misuse it. You've learned to trust your intuition completely, even when others try to convince you that your perceptions are wrong. You've developed the courage to set boundaries and maintain them, even when people react negatively to your newfound strength. You've discovered that you can be compassionate and understanding without being a doormat, and that you can help others without sacrificing yourself in the process. This is your victory, chosen one. Not just escaping from one toxic situation, but evolving into someone who is immune to such manipulation in the future. You've learned to trust yourself completely, to protect your energy fiercely, and to create a life filled with authentic connections and genuine success. The person who was trying to mirror you couldn't replicate this transformation because it requires the very authenticity and inner strength they were trying to fake. Your journey continues, but now you're traveling with the wisdom, confidence, and clarity that can only come from successfully navigating one of life's most challenging experiences and emerging stronger, wiser, and more authentically yourself than ever before. The mirror they tried to create was a cheap imitation. You remain the original, and originals are irreplaceable.